G'day guys, so today we started looking at Ned Kelly yesterday in class. So I just thought I'd make this video as another form of revision, another form of content delivery. So we'll see how we go. So great to see that some of you are really interested in learning about Ned Kelly and looking at Ned Kelly. Definitely is a major part of Australia's history. So the early years of Ned Kelly. Now, he was born Edward, so Edward Kelly, or Ned, was born 1855 and he died in 1880. So that makes him 25 when he was hung. So bushranger, was born in June 1855 at Beveridge, Victoria, the eldest son of John Kelly and his wife Ellen. So let's have a look. Where is Beveridge, you might be asking yourself. So let's have a look at Google Maps. Beveridge, Victoria. So we can see there it is. There's Beveridge. That's the Hume Highway. We zoom out, kind of north of Melbourne. We're down here, so you can kind of see that it's up around here somewhere. Not too far out of the city, but then he later moved further northeast, which we'll have a look at soon. His father was born in Tipperary, Ireland in 1820 and sentenced in 1841 to 7 years transportation for stealing 2 pigs. He arrived in Van Diemen's Land in 1842. Okay, we've looked at Van Diemen's Land. We now know where that is. When his sentence expired in 1848, he went to the Port Phillip district. So that's around Melbourne at the moment. We still call that Port Phillip Bay. Where on 18th of November 1850 he married Ellen, the 18-year-old daughter of James and Mary Quinn. They had 5 daughters and 3 sons. So Australians complimenting someone's courage used to say that person was as game as Ned Kelly. Kelly was and has been the subject of a play, ballet, songs, poems and novels. So some of you might have seen the movie, it's up here, the front cover with Heath Ledger. I can't remember the exact date it came out. I would have thought early 2000s. I definitely remember seeing it. And all these different poems, plays, movies portray Ned Kelly in different light. So whether he might be a hero, he might be an outlaw. Depends on who the director is. Artist Sidney Nolan portrayed the Kelly legend in a series of paintings. Both Mick Jagger and Heath Ledger played his part in movies. So the question is posed to you, why did an outlaw win such a place in Australian folklore? There's just another ad for the legend of the bushranger Ned Kelly. It looks fairly old. I couldn't find a date on it, and I'm assuming it might be for a play, I would have thought. Just want to show you this link down the bottom, if you've got time to have a look. The story of the Kelly gang is actually the world's first feature-length movie. So it's here on YouTube. All you need to look up is first Ned Kelly movie, and this is actually no sound. If it wants to play.
Hey Mom.
There's no sound, so when it was playing at the theatres, someone would be up the front in the piano and actually playing their piano to the mood of the scene. So it goes for about 15 minutes, which is then seen as a feature-length film. Okay, moving on. You can have a look at that another time. In 1869 and 1870, Ned faced 3 charges of robbery. All were dismissed through lack of evidence. But in late 1870, aged just 15, he received 6 months hard labour in Beechworth jail for assault and 3 years for horse stealing. 3 years after his sentence, Ned joined his stepfather in horse and cattle stealing. In 1878, arrest warrants were issued for Ned and his youngest brother Dan. So let's just have a look at where Beechworth is. Okay, there's Beechworth. So again, you can see it was further northeast of where he was born in Beveridge. There's Wangaratta, and Benalla. Glenrowan, which we'll have a look at soon, is just in between Benalla and Wangaratta. There's a train system that runs all the way up past, that follows the Hume Highway that Ned and his brothers used for their outlaw ways. Alright. On 5th of April 1878, Constable Alexander Fitzpatrick visited the Kelly house. According to Fitzpatrick, he arrested Dan, so Ned's brother, but Alan Kelly was assaulted him with a shovel, and Ned fired a shot at him. Ned's versions were very different, which you can see and read about in this source. So that's on the next slide. You can pause there and read this if you like. We just don't have time to go through at the moment, but it's a source written by Ned Kelly that portrays that incident very different. Warrants were issued for the arrest of Ned and Dan for an attempted murder. So his mother, Ellen, was sentenced to 3 years in prison, and this enraged the boys, the sons. They hid out in Wombat Ranges but offered to give themselves up in exchange for their mother's freedom. Okay, so they've been wanted for attempted murder, and they've been hiding out and willing to give themselves up in exchange for their mother. So there's that source you can have a read about. Just want to show you these two websites quickly. They're run by the State Library Victoria. This website, it's actually a recording of a library seminar into in-depth, goes for over an hour and a half, in-depth discussion about Ned Kelly's life.
Remarkable life of Ned Kelly can be a fiery terrain.
That's stringy bucks.
So a range of different historians there talking, and related to that, the State Library Victoria has also created an app that you can download on your phone. So Street History, Hoddle's Grid, and that includes more information about Ned and the areas that he was moved around in. So I definitely recommend downloading that. Police parties were sent out to hunt for the Kellys. Constables Scanlon, Lonigan and McIntyre and Sergeant Kennedy arrived at Stringybark Creek in the Wombat Ranges in October 1878. When Ned attempted to capture and disarm them, 3 police were killed. Only McIntyre escaped alive. So they're now outlaws, wanted. They could be shot on sight. So here is a sign. Wanted Ned Kelly, £2,000 reward for capture of offenders Kellys, and 2 others increased for each offender. In December that year, so 1878, the gang, now consisting of Ned, Dan and their friends, Steve Hart and Joe Byrne, robbed a 167A bank at Euroa without firing a shot. February 79, they raided Gerald Dury, locking the police in their own cell and robbing the hotel and bank. So here's just a further map of the areas and towns that Ned and his brothers went to. So there's Gerald Dury, where the bank was robbed, February 1879, which we just read about. Here's the Hume Highway, and here's the train track as well running up through it. So here was Ned born in Beveridge, just near Wallen, moved up all the way up through Euroa, Benalla, there's Beechworth, and Gerald Dury. Lovely part of the world up there. So the final showdown. So they're now wanted for this attempted murder and these bank robberies. They're on the run. Police want them shot on sight. Okay, probably the most wanted people in Australia at the time. From June 1880, the gang made suits of armour from ploughs and supplied firearms to their supporters. They planned to lure the police to travel by train from their headquarters at Benalla to Beechworth. Okay, so there's Benalla, travelling ideally by train to Beechworth. This would take them through Glenrowan, where there were many Kelly sympathisers and Kelly fans. The plan was to derail the train, capture the police and demand Alan's freedom in exchange for theirs, so they're still after their mum's freedom. On the evening of Saturday 26th of June 1880, To set the police on the track to Beechworth, Joe Byrne shot and killed his old friend Aaron Sherritt, a police informer. Meanwhile, Ned and Steve forced railway workers to remove a section of the track just north of Glenrowan, about a kilometre 800 metres. Joined by Dan and Joe, they took over Mrs. Jones' Glenrowan Hotel and waited for the train. So this is where Ned made two fatal mistakes that eventually resulted in his death. When Thomas Curnow, school teacher, asked to take his sick wife home, Ned agreed. Shortly after 2 o'clock on Monday morning, Curnow stopped the train, which was carrying 10 police and several Aboriginal trackers. Ned had also assumed that the police would not suspect an attempt to derail the train, but well ahead of the engine pulling the police carriages, there was another engine. Had it been derailed, the second engine would have stopped safely. The gang could have retreated into the hills. Instead, they chose to stay and fight. So there's a trial and execution. So they captured Ned at the hotel. The police finally allowed civilians to leave. Left inside were Dan and Steve, and badly injured Martin Cherry, who died later of his wounds. Shooting continued that day until around 3 p.m. when police set fire to the hotel. Dan and Steve chose to commit suicide rather than be taken alive. So Ned's trial for the murder of Constable Lonergan commenced in Melbourne on 28th of October. He was found guilty and sentenced to death by Justice Redmond Barry. No sympathisers had joined the fight at Glenrowan, but more than 60,000 people signed a petition to save Ned from hanging, and thousands attended a protest meeting the night before his execution. His last words, at the age of 25, he stood the gallows at 10 a.m. on the 11th of November 1880, were, well, I suppose it has come to this, or such is life, depending on which source you use. And there are some key facts about Ned Kelly you can pause and look at.